The Iranian illegal migrant raped a British schoolgirl. No prison, no young offender institution.
Over 250,000 rapes in a single year. Every 3 minutes, a new crime. And up to 1,000 small boat migrants arrive daily. The nation could no longer tolerate it. More than 80,000 right in the central square of London accused Starmer of importing thousands of rapists and murderers into the UK. Soon after, more than 402 fires were reported across the country. We are witnessing the most severe anti-migrant crisis in Britain. At 5:42 p.m, the first groups of rioters clashed with police in the countryside. They demanded the urgent resignation of Starmer and the deportation of over 600,000 illegal migrants. In response, the media labelled them as far-right criminals. More than 5 riot control units were deployed. 5:50 p.m, unknown individuals launched a severe attack on the vans. Reports from the scene indicated that more than 16 vehicles were destroyed. Just after it, masked groups accused Starmer of betraying Britain. In turn, the authorities reported far-right provocateurs face up to 3 years in prison, but the crowds of protesters doubled. At 6:10 p.m, enough is enough. Rioters gathered on dozens of streets simultaneously. Groups with British flags demanded immediate intervention by the King. The reaction of the Crown? We urge the nation to understanding and tolerance. So, at 6:19 p.m, it all began. Over 20 police vans were spotted in 3 areas. In just 2 minutes, police launched a counter-attack on horses. In 3 sectors, clashes immediately began with so-called far-right groups. For the first time in 2 months, batons were used. Reports from the scene indicated 138 injured on both sides. Suddenly, opposition leader Farage chimed in. While hundreds of officers suppressed patriot protests, machete gangs run rampant. Right after that, up to 348 illegal migrants landed on the southern border. This marked the beginning of the end. 6:30, sharp. Unknown individuals began smashing storefronts. Over 32 businesses were damaged during the protests. Around £5,500,000 was lost in a matter of hours. So-called far-right protests mushroomed from London to Southampton, but the worst was yet to come. For some reason, fires were reported at hotels. On the ground, emergency services workload surged by 280%. By 8:05 p.m, a warning was announced for rioters to cease the unrest. Right there, dozens of properties were set ablaze during the chaos. Over 30 vans and equipped officers were preparing for something terrible. It all began. Groups in balaclavas started setting off fireworks. Instantly, TikTok footage gained 9.6 million views in 2 hours. The unknown individuals were no longer marching with flags, they were taking action. At least 5 police groups were spotted on the streets. Blue flashing lights and sirens sounded in what were recently peaceful neighbourhoods, and at 9:01 p.m, locals fought back against an elite unit. Take a look. After that, talk began about an upcoming briefing by Starmer by morning, but the streets did not know what would happen in the next 8 hours. The two sides began to mutually accuse each other of provocations. Protesters with British flags declared that officers betrayed their own nation and cited a 2-tier policy. The opposing side accused the masked groups of mass provocations and displays of racism. Yet confronted with this historic rage of British nation, the Prime Minister delivers identical scripted excuses. Starmer claims law enforcement is handling the pressure, while frontline defenders paint a vastly different picture. Confronting this unprecedented surge of national anger, the Prime Minister repeats his standard defence. Starmer insists those waving flags are simply far-right extremists destroying Britain. But just instantly, after a new social media clip reached over 5 million views online, Twitter users shared the powerful video showing a desperate citizen speaking out. 42-year-old demonstrator stood firmly on the government square, politicians will definitely label us as racist thugs ruining the country. Then he added, "We, however, only desire basic safety for our young daughters today." Immediately afterward, opposition figures leaked massive statistics. These numbers represent the exact data Keir avoids mentioning by some reason. Currently, up to 1,200,000 undocumented individuals reside here. Nigel Farage publicly stated school-age girls face extreme physical threats. Walking outside after 7 evening hours is now physically dangerous. Data proves sexual assaults happen roughly every 3 minutes nationwide. From Manchester all the way down to South London streets remain unsafe. Unbelievably, the absolute worst part involves direct police protocol changes. Patrol officers receive strict instructions regarding suspect identification processes. Disclosing nationality details might supposedly trigger massive hatred spikes nationwide. Hiding religious backgrounds of attackers is now standard operating procedure. Dozens of regional leaders across Britain warn about these dangerous institutional cover-ups. Such deliberate concealment absolutely destroys any remaining public trust completely. Citizens realise essential criminal details are being kept secret intentionally. Starmer's political opponents in Parliament point out 250,000 annual sexual attacks. Those horrifying figures do not just appear from thin air suddenly. Opposition voices directly link surging crime rates with illegal border crossings. Nigel Farage claims grooming gangs largely consist of specific demographic groups prone to violence. According to him, certain nationalities commit these horrific offences 14 times more frequently. Demonstrators gather daily outside taxpayer-funded 3-star hotel accommodations. Crowds angrily accuse the government of literally protecting foreign criminals. In response, Downing Street calls it groundless conspiracy. But shielding offenders from public scrutiny puts countless innocent lives at risk. Up to 1,000 small boat arrivals land on British shores daily. Many newcomers enter the territory completely lacking valid passport documentation and barely speaking English. Zero background checks mean they don't enter the official police databases. Untracked individuals find committing heinous crimes significantly easier without digital footprints. Nobody knows their true identities or past criminal histories back home. Law enforcement remains paralysed when trying to track unregistered foreign suspects. Frustration boils over as local communities demand immediate transparency and action. Ignoring legitimate safety concerns only fuels the nationwide protest movement further. These broken promises represent more than just political rhetoric. Nearly 200,000 citizens have signed an official petition. Demands for immediate parliament dissolution grow louder every morning. Calls for a sudden general election echo across the nation. Recent polling data reveals a catastrophic collapse in Keir Starmer's approval. Surveys indicate 75% of the population disapproves entirely. Discontent varies slightly by region, but overall, anger remains undeniable. Hundreds of thousands remember the aggressive election campaign pledges clearly. Voters recall the Prime Minister promising absolute street security. Pledges were made to systematically dismantle violent grooming gangs. Campaigners guaranteed an immediate crackdown on terrifying machete violence. Leaders swore to halt the endless flow of undocumented boats. Reality shows a completely different picture. Critics say practically zero concrete actions followed those bold pre-election statements. Citizens fully expected massive deportation flights to Africa immediately. Flights to the Middle East were supposed to clear backlogs. Nothing of the sort ever materialized under this new leadership. People anticipated heavily armed naval vessels patrolling the English Channel. Royal Marine units were projected to secure vulnerable southern borders. Instead, frontline border agents face incredibly restrictive engagement rules. Under-Starmer officers are explicitly forbidden from physically intercepting incoming dinghies. Directives force maritime patrols to safely escort these vessels ashore. Instructions mandate that authorities must actively protect undocumented arrivals, protection from whom exactly remains the most controversial question today. Mainstream broadcasting networks quickly label concerned locals as far-right waves. Journalists frequently brand protesting taxpayers as political extremists. Demonstrators absolutely reject these hostile media descriptions of their movement. Working-class residents simply call themselves genuine patriots of Britain. Leaked documents finally revealed that an astonishing 99% of British prisons operate at absolute maximum capacity today. Severe overcrowding creates a fundamentally critical situation for national law enforcement agencies across the entire country. Emergency protocols were hastily activated by Keir Starmer to handle this unprecedented correctional system collapse. Administration officials recently introduced the highly controversial SDS-40 scheme to artificially empty overcrowded detention facilities. Under this specific program, inmates receive automatic early freedom after serving barely half their mandated sentences. Currently, more than 40,000 convicted criminals walk in British towns because of these desperate measures. Analytics claim streets nationwide instantly became significantly more perilous following this massive wave of premature prisoner releases. Opposition leaders immediately proposed a radically tough alternative to solve the glaring capacity crisis permanently. Hardline politicians argue vehemently against wasting hard-earned taxpayer funds on housing foreign offenders in domestic cells. Immediate deportation back to their original homelands remains the most logical solution, according to conservative strategists. Mass 24/7 expulsions would instantly clear hundreds of prison beds without requiring any additional government spending. However, the Prime Minister completely rejects such decisive actions out of hand. Publicly, Starmer labels rapid deportations as fundamentally anti-human and completely against modern tolerant values. Instead, the current leadership simply promises to construct several brand new correctional facilities over the next few years. Farage says that building more cages completely ignores the fundamental underlying factors driving this explosive crime wave. Protesting citizens completely agree that the actual root problem originates from entirely different political decisions. Uncontrolled demographic influxes directly correlate with the overflowing justice system. Mysteriously, the ruling party still refuses to authorize border agents to physically hold inbound coastal traffic. Up to 1,000 undocumented individuals continue landing on southern shores essentially every single day unchecked. Whistleblowers recently leaked explosive internal intelligence proving that immediate legislative solutions already exist in draft form by opposition. Official directives could easily be signed and fully implemented within a mere 48-hour window. Execution of these existing orders only requires genuine political willpower from the highest executive office. Drafted regulations would legally command maritime forces to actively turn back incoming dinghies immediately. Current operational mandates absurdly force naval personnel to safely escort these illegal vessels straight into British ports. Implementing the leaked papers would permanently shut down all taxpayer-funded three-star hotel accommodations for migrants. Taxpayers currently bleed nearly £8 million daily just to house and feed undocumented foreigners. Halting this astronomical financial drain could theoretically resolve massive domestic budget deficits almost overnight. Yet the current administration stubbornly refuses to agree with this kind of measures. Refusing to act practically guarantees further destabilization of the already crippled penal network. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister continues delivering the exact same excuses. Speeches repeatedly blame the previous administration for the ongoing chaos. Nigel Farage strikes back on Starmer. Shifting blame towards inherited systemic failures happens during every interview. Questions arise regarding why the ruling party refuses to govern. Observers constantly ask why the broken system remains completely untouched. Integration policies seem completely non-existent in modern British society. Communities fracture because newcomers face absolutely zero assimilation requirements. England stands entirely alone among all major European nations now. Nowhere else on the continent does such a generous system exist. Taxpayers blindly fund premium three-star hotel accommodations indefinitely.